the Sprint Studios. This is San Diego's news source, 10 News.
10 News viewers up and down the coast buzzing about 3 strong earthquakes, 2 4.7 and 1 of 4.6 seconds apart, centered near the desert town of Anza. Right now, our 10 News crews are covering every angle of what you need to know about these quakes. I'm Bill Griffith.
Nice to have you with us. I'm Koshal Patel. We have a reaction from the desert where the shaking was the strongest and those high-rise buildings downtown. But let's get right to geologist Pat Abbott to explain exactly what's going on. Pat, as we just said, 3 earthquakes all within seconds of each other. How rare is that?
Not that rare, really, but it's kind of nice, really, to sort of divide it up into 3 separate steps rather than combining it all and doing all the energy at once.
Why the difference in the magnitudes? It came out as a 5.1, 5.2, now it's been downgraded. All 3 of them have.
Well, you know, the very first numbers we get are just a computer kicking out the numbers. That's before anybody actually looks at the data and says what's good data and what's bad data. And then they always vary a little bit. They get stronger or weaker after somebody reviews it.
And when does the structural damage, when do the engineers go check the bridges and dams for structural damage? These are too low, correct?
There shouldn't be significant damage from this. As a rule of thumb, I like magnitude 6. 6 and above, I expect some bad things to happen. They can happen in the upper 5s and all too, but in the 4s, it's nice to, we'll probably not have anything. There may be some isolated incident. You never can tell when a ceiling fan will fall or grocery shelves will get dumped onto somebody, but it should be more in that kind of an incident rather than serious damage.
They were certainly felt, though. We've had reports here in the newsroom from up in the LA area all the way south of the border.
Well, we were kind of up on near the northern end of the Salton Sea, so we're more or less equidistant from the Orange County, LA area as San Diego. And so, but radiating out those distances, that would be felt by a large number of people, especially for as small as they were.
And talk about, this was on the San Jacinto fault line, which ends up actually crossing into the San Andreas fault?
Yes, the San Jacinto fault, for longtime viewers, 1987, it ruptured to the south of us there, down near the lower left-hand end of the Salton Sea. Here it is going today. As it moves on north, it blends with the San Andreas fault inside the city limits of San Bernardino. Now there's a city waiting for some real action because they have the San Andreas and San Jacinto and their combination within their city limits.
But the San Jacinto doesn't pose a real threat to San Diego, I mean, of a large magnitude quake?
Well, it could get in the low 7s, and we had 1968. We had a 6.8 out there near Ocotillo Wells. In 1987, Superstition Hills, but that's kind of running right by Borrego Springs and through the areas that aren't as heavily populated as closer to the coast.
And again, these were 3 earthquakes, not 1 earthquake and aftershocks, correct?
Well, the way we define an earthquake versus aftershocks is we always take the biggest one and say that's the earthquake. Sometimes we think that's the earthquake, but then a bigger one comes. That means the first one then becomes a foreshock because it's smaller. But this time when you get 2 4.7s, well, we'd have to say it's a twin earthquake. And the 4.6 is so close, I'd almost like to call them triplets and say we had them in 3 steps, 1, 2, 3.
We have a graphic here showing what kind of movement did we see from this earthquake?
Well, this is the main kind of movement we get in California. This is what we call horizontal movement, strikes slip. As you see there, you notice how the left-hand side there, that would be San Diego and Los Angeles, that has moved towards the top of the screen there or towards the north. It's what we call strike slip. But the main point being it's a horizontal motion, and the typical motion is that the side of the fault closest to the ocean moves northward towards Alaska. That's the most typical earthquake we have in the state of California.
Does that create different energy than an up and down shift would?
We prefer the horizontal because that doesn't rupture the land in as violent a way. When you lift it up and down vertically, that's far more energy dumped on the land surface. Here you see all those red faults there in Southern California. Each one of those things has its left side or ocean side moving towards the north, which means we just feel the seismic waves radiating away from that. We don't get lifted directly ourselves.
And how deep were these?
Well, at first they showed it to be very, very shallow. So it looks like one of them, if that number holds, that wasn't just a computer, it was only 1/10 of a kilometer, which would just be a few hundred feet below the ground surface. If that's the case, that should have torn the ground surface. The latter 2 here, they're showing them like at 6 miles and 8 miles deep, which would be not enough to tear the ground surface. So an earthquake of that magnitude, what we expect the actual rupture to be, would be, you might visualize a rupture along the lengths of, say, 3 football fields. In terms of, ballpark figure, what does that mean, what the ground's doing?
This is, as everybody knows, the 2nd anniversary of the Japanese quake and tsunami. And of course, whenever there's an earthquake anywhere along the coast, the first thing people think of is tsunami.
Well, the good news here is, 1, the magnitude's too low to make a significant tsunami if it was on the ocean floor. But the fact that it was inland means no tsunami is possible at all.
Okay. Pat Abbott, thank you very much for that. We do have complete team coverage of this, and phone calls started flooding into the 10 newsroom when that earthquake hit at 9:55 this morning. Melissa Macia is here now with reaction from some of the folks who felt it. Mel?
And Bill, many of you were going about your normal day, either at home or at work, when the ground started shaking. And some of you weren't sure at first what it was, but then very soon figured out it was, yes, another quake. Now, I've been on the phone for the last hour talking to some of you who were definitely caught off guard. Listen in.
One of my sons stayed home from school this morning, had a headache and wasn't feeling good. And we started to hear the sound and feel the rumble, and it almost felt like the house was suspended, like lifted up and suspended for a moment. And then, of course, we heard the sound. There wasn't, from where I was in the house, I didn't feel too much of a violent shake, but my son came out of the bedroom. He has a bunk bed, and he was on the top bunk, and he said his bed was shaking.
Wow, how did your son feel?
A little scared, confused look. Wanted to know what had happened, and of course we ran outside to see if the world had stopped, and it did. There's people doing landscaping and things like that, and everything got quiet for a minute.
It sounded like my guy slammed the door in our storage area where the wine is. And like I said, I didn't feel it. I heard it.
So was it shorter than what you felt in the past?
Very short. What is it, Des? Like, what, 2 seconds? If even? It was not very long.
Yeah, it was definitely a talker, though. Now, Mitzi works in Borrego Springs. This is her first earthquake in San Diego since moving to this area. The store where she works at, Corner Market, fortunately did not have any damage. We are taking more of your calls, and we will have more reaction here at 11:30.
Melissa, thank you. Well, some of the wildest shaking, of course, felt downtown with all the tall buildings. 10 News reporter Hannah Mullins is in the middle of those high rises. Hannah?
And Koshal, we're at Fire Station 4. It's completely empty. We pulled up as the fire engines pulled out, which is common when there's an earthquake, so fire crews won't get trapped inside the firehouse. We do want to put it into perspective. We are right next to Petco Park. We've been talking to a lot of people out here and just talked to some people who are in that brick building over there. They say they felt the ground shake beneath their feet, then the lights started to sway and office supplies started to rattle.
Wow, that was that big? Wow. That's amazing to hear that it was a 5.1, you know. I felt a little shaken, didn't think it was that big.
Well, I was sitting at my desk and just typing up something for a client, and I felt it. I was like, whoa, hold up. Let me make sure, let me confirm with everybody else if they felt it. Everybody else did.
Now, we were just around the corner with some of those fire engines from a fire when it happened, which sent people jumping from buildings. We didn't feel a thing. A lot of the people we're talking to out here did. We're going to tell you coming up in the next half hour what it felt like in one of those high rises. For now, we're live in the East Village. Hannah Mullins, 10 News.
Hannah, thank you. And of course, there are a series of aftershocks to go with that triple header of the original shocks. Robert Santos joins us now with that.
Thanks very much, Bill. Yeah, we have our 10 News earthquake map here, and I'll zoom on in. A lot of these actually are from yesterday, but all the yellow boxes show earthquakes, and even the red one here. There's one that's actually the 5.1 that was initially registered as a 5.1. I'll zoom in closer, and you'll see the orange boxes. That's now the ones that have been downgraded to the 4.7. But you look at all the yellow boxes. Now, to be an aftershock, it has to be close in time and space. So you notice all the yellows. Yeah, that happened within 5 to 10, 20 minutes of the earthquake. And you see the various magnitudes I'm seeing, 2.1, there's one for 1.7, and I've counted more than 3 dozen of those. Now let me switch to another map here. This is a really interesting map that shows the relation. You see San Diego right around there, and I'm going to go ahead and scroll up, and you'll see where the earthquake, the cluster of earthquakes are right there. Now what happens is I'm going to put in where the San Jacinto fault is, right close to there. So that's what Dr. Pat Abbott was talking about. The San Andreas fault is actually to the northeast of it, right there. So very close to the San Jacinto fault. We'll continue to track these aftershocks as we see them pop up here on the map. Koshal?
Robert, thank you so much. Within seconds, earthquake was the top trending in San Diego. Natasha Zuvez joins us from the Live Center with the huge online response right now and the first images of damage.
Yeah, that's right, Koshal. 10 News just checked. Earthquake is still dominating social media in San Diego right now. And in the 10 News Live Center, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. San Diegans starting to report damage right away. We want to show you some of these first images. This person tweeting, this broken ceiling fan was hanging over their bed. Thank goodness they weren't asleep. asleep at the time. Shattered glass on the floor there. And then take a look. This person had old cinder blocks knocked down and found it killed a rat during that quake. Now 10 News is seeing more images coming in from viewers at this time. Much more to come in the 10 News Live Center. I'm Natasha Zuvest-Bill sending it to you.
Natasha, bad luck for the rat. Thanks.